We outrun him and he turns around. I don't perfectly recall the events that followed suit. It is pretty hard for me to believe what I saw exactly. Me and black friend are lost, but feeling fearless. Although we've never been this far back in the woods, we still push forward. The woods are pretty typical, about 3 feet of space between trees, not a lot of overgrown foliage. Not entirely sure how big the woods were either, there was a lot of empty farmland around. We solid snake around and frick around in various bodies of water until we hear barking. Eventually we decide to turn around and find our way back, begin to notice that the barking is coming from the assumed direction of our neighborhood and our local dogs. Get closer and closer to the barking, until I see a group of 6 to 8 men wearing purple robes. My young mind had no idea what to think, thought they were the KKK. Me and black friend hide near a small cluster of bushes and observe them, probably about 150 yards away with a small pond in between us. They're just standing there, hardly moving, sort of slowly swaying, and their dogs are going absolutely nuts. Wait around for what seems to be an entirety in my mind. We finally agree to book it and get away. Almost the moment we left the bushes, I see movement in my peripheral. When I look at them, they turn straight towards us. Still standing still, facing us. I nearly stop when I see their faces. Extremely pale, and I could not make out any color in their eyes. Their eyes looked white. Dogs now jumping on their leashes towards us. Luckily they're still standing there, not giving any crap. I take one last glance before they're out of my sight and notice pile of what I assume is gore in the center of them. B20 decides to write a VN. Needs a few pictures. Go in the forest to take some. At night, of course, but with the flash, the pictures are decent enough. Decides to go near an abandoned house because I feel lucky. Have a light but don't use it because I can see in the dark and it's creepier with it. Reach the main gate. Takes a few pictures of it with the flash. Hear loud things over my head. PPP, probably an owl, I think. Decides not to try my luck. Is suddenly much more aware of the noise in the forest. Whole thing was pretty silent until now. Ends up running out of the woods. Never managed to write that damn thing. Took pictures for nothing. Hardly in a woods, but I want more stories, so here goes. A solid line of forest behind duplex, not sure how far it spans, but it's about the length of a football field from my backyard to the end. Incredibly steep, like to the point where you have to grab trees and pull yourself up to traverse it. The one time me and some friends went exploring, nothing happened. We saw it opened up to a golf course at the top. So we have this 4 feet tall Pink Panther plushie. Edgy teenagers with swords and whatnot, generally beat the crap out of it. Swords were dull, didn't actually do much. I forget why, but we take it up into the woods one day. Find what looks like somewhere a hobo lived, booze bottles, shirts, trash etc. everywhere in a ragged blanket. Messing around tossing bottles and crap, hear rustling in the distance, like at least man-sized rustling. Can't make out where it's coming from, the trees aren't even that dense. Always get kind of an ominous feeling when we go in there. We know about leaving the panther. About a week later we muster the courage to go get it. We need something to go ninja on. Find it where we left it. Its torso was torn to shreds. Where the stomach was is just stuffing ripped out indiscriminately like whatever did it. Expected entrails, arm missing, eyes and throat gashed out, also extremely dirty, looks like it had been exposed to the elements for a long time. Start to nope and hear the same rustling. Super nope engaged. Nearly sprint downhill, which takes a lot longer because of the incline. Get out unscathed aside from small cuts etc. running through the foliage. Feel like we're safe, kind of just staring into the trees. Here rusting very close to the tree line, which is about 50 feet from the back, pooping bricks. Watch out window for an hour. Nothing. Make ramen. We never go up there again, though once fall comes we spot the arm that was missing stuck up in a tree. Probably just a bored/mad hobo, but was still too spooky for me. Not my story, but my sister's. In the woods behind our neighborhood, playing in the creek with friend. Look up and see this tall, white, featureless man. Freeze and watch it. It leans down on all fours, body moving as if it is almost liquid, like it has no bones. Shape shifts into almost like a cow. Both crap bricks and run up the hill back to our house. We always called it the cow man. Both my sister and her friend are in the mid-20s and still swear by this. Both are religious and don't lie. I've posted about this a few times but no one ever knows what it is. Foot green text. I was around 17 years old, in South Carolina, driving up from Charleston to Dorchester for a party with a friend of mine named Kyle. I was the driver, and he was the passenger. Now, I'd lived in South Carolina for 7 years, and spent another 6 in Sevierville, Tennessee prior to that, and I was in love with the wilderness. Nothing creepy had ever happened in all that time, regardless of how rural or backwoods I'd gotten. So, driving up there, the hour got late, we were on a stretch of lonely road with nothing but woods and swamp on either side of the road. No buildings, no houses, and no real civilization for around 30 miles ahead, and behind us. Conversation was typical 17-year-old dude conversation. Dude, we're gonna get so wasted. I haven't seen these guys in forever, and so on, and so forth. I have my eyes on the road, however, in order to make sure I don't slam into some random wildlife crossing by, with no lights, in the woods. At 1:30 in the AM, visibility was fairly crappy. As I'm talking, I spot something around 500 feet up the road walking along the side of the pavement, towards our car. As my mind is on driving and convo, my first thought on the figure was probably some hitchhiker, or maybe someone's car broke down. However, as soon as I heard how strange both of those possibilities sounded, I started to watch the figure more closely. 1:40 in the AM, now, middle of the goddamn woods, with no civilization for dozens of miles in either direction, and the road is one way. I haven't passed a car, or seen another car, in over an hour. Conversation slows down, as the figure gets closer. I realize something isn't quite right, because it's way too tall, now that it's closer. I'm 5'10", and my friend was 6'1" and 245 pounds, but this thing had to have been 8 at least, and the body proportions were wrong. The arms dangled far below the hip, with human-esque hands with way too long fingers. I could not make out claws, but who knows, it was dark. The head was bald. The skin was pale gray-white, like a maggot, and mottled brown splotches, which may have been dirt or natural coloration, were mixed in. The eyes were black, large, and reflected light in a predatory way when the truck's lamps shone on them. The legs were bent oddly at the knees, but were quite long nonetheless. Couldn't make out the feet, but the hands were humanish, so I'd presume the feet were, too. The worst part was the mouth. Imagine a human mouth, where the lower jaw has been stretched and distended all the way down to the chest. The teeth were yellow, and sharp. The mouth was red, but had no visible tongue lolling around. Conversation stopped dead. I flicked the high beams on, as it seemed to be quickening pace as we approached. moving in a very jerky and halting manner, and when the high beams hit, it shrieked in a weird, two-toned way, and made to move across the road. Which was bad, because my reaction had been to slam on the accelerator in order to pass the thing by. We locked eyes as I approached, and I introduced that grey-skinned mother fricker to a Ford F-150 doing about 70. When we collided, everybody screamed, me, Kyle, and Stretch Armstrong, and the thing made a pleasingly solid thump upon impact with the right corner of the hood and bumper. The shrieking stopped abruptly, and turned into a squalling moan, and the impact sent it hurtling into a tree on the roadside. We kept going. There was no blood, and only minor damage to the truck. I love steel. As we passed it, I told him to check R6, and he said, "It's down. I can see its legs. It's not moving." I nodded once, and stayed quiet for another 5 minutes. My friend, who was used to being a badass and playing high school football on the D-line, was visibly shaken. He was in his seat, and he was hyperventilating. I drove the rest of the way in silence, got to the party, said hi so I could get through the door, locked myself in the bathroom, looked myself in the mirror, and probably cried for about 15 minutes. No clue what road. I live in Miami now, and I'm 27. I don't really care whether anyone believes me. I know what I saw, and I saw it way before I ever even heard 4chan existed, or knew what a skinwalker was. I was a huge nerd, very much into D&D and other crap, so part of my issue was trying to figure out what fricking monster I even saw. It didn't seem to match any description of anything I'd ever heard of. All I knew was, it wasn't human, and we gave it a black eye in exchange, so I knew it was solid and not some kind of ghost, or hallucination. I actually decided to share the story, because some of the skinwalker posts have mentioned them as being grey-skinned, naked men, which synced up exactly with what I saw. It's actually comforting to know other people have encountered them, and I hope it comforts the people who have encountered them to know that they don't seem to enjoy being broadsided by 3 tons of steel at 70 miles per hour. If it was a person, they're dead now. Sucks for them, but they deserved it for wandering around in an 8-foot-tall studio-quality costume with a built-in voice distorter at 1:40 in the AM on a deserted road. What did they think was gonna happen? Get picked up and taken to the party in exchange for a blowy joey? Too implausible. Some weird, undocumented thing hanging out and preying on people living on the fringe of society? Sounds scarier, but more reasonable. To me, the fact that this thing found our little encounter unpleasant suggests they may be a big problem for solo humans, but 10, or 20, or 30, heavily armed and armored, combat ready, and supported with vehicular backup? If a civ vehicle can put it on its ass, I bet human firepower and superior numbers could make sure it never got up again. And maybe they're not smart enough to understand our technology, but smart enough to do what most predators do, go after the stragglers, and nibble at the corners of the herd, not the herd itself. After all, stampedes can kill a lion, no prob. No idea about the body. For all I know, it may have been killed by the impact. I never